Quorum, and I see Councillor Castro on the screen.
Morning.
So we've got everyone is present, so I therefore declare special council budget of today's date open, and I call it to order. Councillors, I always open and seek wisdom, so I'll start with a prayer. Heavenly Father, grant that we who seek to serve you may have the wisdom of your Spirit, the guiding of your hand, and the grace to serve together for the prosperity of our city, the Gold Coast. In Jesus Christ, our Saviour's name. Amen. Amen. So, okay, item 1, attendance, leaves and apologies, nil. Leave of absence, nil. Conflict of interest, nil. There you go. Item 4, we'll go to 4.1. And councillors, while this is on grey paper, the motion will be up there, and Mr. CEO, in the preamble, there's nothing in there that's confidential, is there? I mean, I've looked at it.
No, Mayor.
No. So the grey bit is really the attachment. And councillors, with this, I just want to open with a recap of how we got here regarding our arts and cultural precinct. It began long before I was mayor, began 30 years ago, I think, and that the very third art building was built. And I think Dennis O'Connor was mayor, and Mayor Keith Hunt moved the motion, and Dennis carried through because Mayor Hunt passed away. Anyhow, fast forward to 2012 election, I took it to the city as part of my election platform. The Arts and Cultural Precinct was front page in the bulletin, and as a result of the election, we came in quite a few new councillors, and in 2013 thereabouts, I think, we commissioned an architecture design competition. At the time, the prize money was around 1 million and a bit, 1 million and a quarter, 1.3, not sure exactly, but it was mooted to be the highest art architecture competition anywhere in Australia. And I even asked, does that include the Sydney Opera House? And it did. So we went out throughout the world, 71 people submitted design, and we took our time, and there was prominent people was on the competition selection board committee, whatever you call it. I think Councillor Donegate, you were there, and we came up and awarded the winning to the current architect, and the design was adopted by council as the master plan for our arts and cultural precinct. Through that, we did it in stages, this one project, and we set up a mayor's advisory board in 2014 to go through all the elements of the design, not just stage one, the whole lot of it. And the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee spent time with the architect, chaired by Robin Archer. Lucy Turnbull was part of that, Philip Bacon, Wesley Enoch, Kate Brennan, myself. And if you look through their credential, it's probably some of the highest credential per people for art and culture anywhere in Australia. And the detailed design for the master plan was then calibrated for that, took it to council, and that then was adopted. From there, we purchased east and west waterside building across the road. From memory is 32.5 million. And to move everyone from Evandale office across the road. And that happened, took a bit of work to refurb and all that sort of stuff. And then we demolished the Evandale office, they called it the beehive, because the atrium looks like a beehive. So that was demolished. And then we commenced the building of the versatile outdoor amphitheatre. And that was built and opened. And we've had performances there. 2016 election comes by, and I again took it to the election and re-elected as mayor, and a lot of you was re-elected. And from the 2016, the art gallery was crystallised, designed, developed at the budget and commencement of the building. And of course, we finished the building, as we can all, I think a lot of us were there. And was built under COVID condition, and we bought it $5 million under the budget. Reason I raised the budget matter there was that the original master plan there was a scope and budget attached to it. And that amount of money, and when we re-looked at the option 2 we're looking at, the question was asked regarding the scope of work and the amount of money. We're on track to deliver for the same amount that we started off back in 2012. So it's quite a unique opportunity for the city to, on time, on budget scenario. And 2020 election comes, I again took it to the election. And I think all incumbents who stood was re-elected, and we got 4 new councillors and perfect injection of new thoughts and new thought process. So that brings it up to where we are today. Our creative industry has come a long way in the last 10 years. When we look back, I recall, and I mentioned to councillors that when I'm in Melbourne, at times, Melbourne people would say the Gold Coast is a cultural desert. And that always rung in my ear. And I'm going, why? Because you got so much culture there? Just because, anyway, I got really, but put it this way, they added determination to myself, and I hope that was contagious to the councils, because as every corner we turn, we have a robust discussion, but end of the day, when we go ahead to vote, we got the job moving and got it done. And the creative industry includes film and television industry. Now, Baz Luhrmann is going to have his post-production here, which is a huge signal to the film television industry. Performing arts and culture, visual, the traditional painting and sculpture. And now, emerging is digital art museum is popping up around the world and in some location. And so it's an ongoing thing, and I think we're in the forefront of all of that. So from there, we'll have education that we can push regarding the creative industry, and we should investigate partnership with our education provider, because back from the beginning, we always had the 3 university vice-chancellor. They were also on the board of the Mayor's Art and Culture Advisory Committee. All 3 vice-chancellors, and they were of service status, and so Ian O'Connor, Tim Brailsford and Peter Lee, and they've been on that journey. So as we progress this journey, I see the education element of our creative industry to be included into this, and that will open doors to collaboration and promotional work. And already Griffith University is a major sponsor of some events at the Home of the Arts. And so even the ballet the other night, that was Griffith University. So there's a lot of avenue, and there's a lot of people that's been on this journey together as a city. So the motion before you today, councillors, I moved that report and attachment deemed non-confidential. No, I had a different one. I had the usual. I moved that the report attachment to be deemed non-confidential, except for those parts deemed by the Chief Executive Officer to remain confidential in accordance with Section 171(3) and 171(3) and 200(4) of the Local Government Act 2009. So by magic, you can probably put that in, and bang. Okay, so that's the part. So it'll be up to the Chief Executive Officer on that. And I just asked him very briefly that do you find the preamble to be confidential, and the preamble is not. So that's why I was able to get into some detail. Can I just finish first, unless I made a mistake? Okay. So in the second part of the motion, that Council endorsed the prefer option 2 from the HOTA mid-level review, and the master plan is updated accordingly. And 3, that the Chief Executive Officer progress detailed brief development, early design and business case activities to the prefer option 2, including further investigation into A, statewide car parking arrangements and requirements, and B, option for demolition and rebuild as opposed to refurbishment of the existing HOTA Central building, which is the old section there, and C, the St Margaret's Chapel relocation. So that's the motion I moved, Councillor. Before I asked for a seconder, Councillor Tozer had a question.
Yeah, so the question about confidentiality...
You'll have to stand. Oh, no, it's closed. Oh, no, we're live. Yeah.
We are open. Happy to stand.
Thank you.
So my understanding is the report that is being referred to today in relation to that resolution is actually just page 4 and 5 on grey paper, rather than the supplementary information which remains confidential. I suppose what I'm trying to work out is that it occurred to me nothing on page 4 or 5 is inherently confidential at all, and that is what is known as the report, whereas the presentation we got the other day, my understanding is that's almost entirely confidential.
So it'd be appropriate for me to change that, the attachment deemed confidential.
That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah,
I think
I agree with you.
We want to, this is actually really important information, nothing secret about it, but the other one has some commercial and confidence stuff that...
No, I agree with you. If you can take the word report out, that would be good. Councillor Vorster.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I just want to make sure that the CEO, though, still has the ability to make elements of that supplementary information non-confidential to support your advocacy work, and particularly if we come to the point of needing to publicly ventilate some of that information. So if we resolve that, with those words, great.
Yeah. Solicitor, the CEO has that flexibility, am I right, or should we add a few more words there?
Mr Mayor, yes, certainly with that resolution, the CEO can do that. The only concern I have is that that material isn't in fact attached to this report. So the ability of the resolution to keep that document confidential is not clear.
Oh, I see.
So what we have before us today is just the short report. I agree that there's nothing in the short report that needs to stay confidential. Hence why I think we were recommending that the resolution could simply be that the report be made non-confidential. The separate document being referred to isn't actually part of this report,
oh, really?
So we don't need to deal with that today in the resolution.
So I should go back to the other clause then?
Mr Mayor, I think the shorter version would be appropriate.
Okay. You learn something new every day. Okay, looks better as well. Anyway, councillors, I put on the record anyway that the attachment of all those options is confidential because it's got commercial matters. Councillor Caldwell.
Well, that was what I was going to say. The report that we've got today actually doesn't provide any clarity or detail as to how we arrive at selecting option 2. So a number of councillors, for example, weren't present at that meeting, and I don't think the information's been circulated. So can we, regardless of the level of confidentiality or not, can I suggest that we include the presentation from the workshop? And I can't remember if it was a memo or not, but at least that the presentation, even if parts of it are to remain confidential, that be included in the minutes of this meeting.
Okay.
No.
Can be circulated separately. Would you be happy? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
if through the CEO, he just circulate the full workshop presentation to all of you. It says confidential. I'm pretty confident there's no leaks. That'd be good.
yeah.
And you know it's all confidential. How about we do that?
So do we not want, you don't want in the public domain options 1, 2 and 3?
No need, I don't think.
Okay.
That will come out eventually.
Right. And so what about the cost? I mean, I'm just concerned, Mr Mayor, that the reason we were having this meeting was because we had a workshop where we weren't able to make things non-confidential that you inherently wanted to place in the public domain in order for them to get public and government support.
Yes.
So are we going to ultimately have not done what we wanted to by not being able to put anything in the public domain? So all of the illustrations, all of the costings, all of the options?
Eventually that will be in the public domain, together with the good news of the federal government and state government coming on board.
Okay, well maybe I'm just concerned that you don't have the capacity to actually walk into a state government office or a federal government office and say, these are the costings associated with this project that council has endorsed. So how do we go about ensuring that we have full capacity to hold up some massive coloured illustrations and say, look, this is what option 2 looks like?
So through you, Mr Mayor,
have to stand, Tim.
I have to stand. So that item is covered in the next, that's covered in the next item. That's exactly what we'll be talking about in the next item. So in the next item, there's a description of this project with the colourful pictures and the numbers next to it.
Okay. All right, so we're trying to put it together, Councillor Patterson. All right, Councillor Vorster, you fine? Yeah, I got it.
Mr Mayor, you are chairing.
Councillor Patterson, seconder. All good. So, so that's where the preamble for me. That's where we got to, and councillors, I would say that the workshop was one of those very robust, and a lot of questions were asked, and I think it was the betterment for our city. And we all started in different angles, but at the end of the day, when I took the straw poll, it was wonderful to be able to come here with confidence. And councillors, in speaking for this motion, I would yield my speaking for the motion and ask Councillor Vorster to speak on my behalf.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, for this unexpected opportunity. Honour. Look, Mr Mayor, I think we all understand that our city is growing, our population is booming, and we all have an interest in ensuring that as our population continues to grow, there are opportunities for Gold Coasters to grow together. And for me, that's ultimately the purpose of this precinct. It's a place where we have an opportunity to reflect on what it means to be a Gold Coaster, push the boundaries to understand what being a Gold Coaster can mean into the future, but also to show the rest of Australia and the rest of the world what's so special about this place. This precinct is unconventional. It looks unconventional, and it's had an unconventional funding model in that it's been the ratepayer that's put everything on the line to show just what impact and what worth art and culture can have for a city. It's really important, though, that as we now enter this new phase of growth ahead of the Olympic Games, that we don't lose momentum. And Mr Mayor, this motion today is about making sure momentum is not arrested. It gives city officers the ability to envisage what that next stage of HOTA looks like, so that we have a promise to present to new Gold Coasters and existing Gold Coasters about just how amazing this city can be. Mr Mayor, what it also does is it puts a focus on value for money. Now, that may not be self-evident for those looking at these words from the outside, but when we talk about things like site-wide car parking arrangements and requirements, and an option for demolition and rebuild, as opposed to the refurbishment of the HOTA Central building, we're saying those things because we want to make sure that this precinct is delivered as quickly as possible, but will only be delivered as quickly as possible if it is as affordable as possible. So for those who place their trust in this council, but are not privy to the information of the council, I just want to underscore this point, that we value the ratepayer dollar, we value the aspirations of the ratepayer, and this motion attempts to reconcile the both. Mr Mayor, in your opening remarks or preamble, I think you made an excellent point in that development of this precinct has been presented time and time and time again at elections. I just think as community representatives, it's so important that we reflect on that. Part of our work is keeping faith with the community who put us in positions of leadership. And I know in my own community, and I'm sure it's the same across the Gold Coast, there is a deep desire to make sure that we have something of state significance that reflects Gold Coast values right in our backyard. And I'm terribly excited about the opportunity we all have to make sure that there's a contribution from other levels of government to ensure that we have this jewel in our crown. So, Mr Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Hopefully that's given some voice to what you might have contributed. Thank you.
Speaking against the motion, Councillor Owen Jones.
So, Mr Mayor, I don't want to speak against it, I want to speak to it, if that's okay.
Okay.
So, Mr Mayor, I think it's important that the residents of Gold Coast realise that the Gold Coast, as the second largest city in Queensland and the sixth largest city in Australia, has a deficit of theatre and entertainment space on a per capita basis. And I think it's also important that the Gold Coasters appreciate that the development that's happened on this site since inception, and in particular since 2012, has been led solely by funding from the ratepayer, and not to a small amount, a not insignificant amount of around $130 million. And in order to get past the deficit of theatre seats, we actually need the deficit of funding from the state and the federal government to improve, and that's effectively what today is about. So today talks about setting the city up to be in the best position as possible to partner with the other two levels of government in delivering something, because what we've had to date is a deficit of funding from those two levels of government, Mr Mayor. So I think that this sets us in the path forward, and the business case will flesh out all of the things that we need to know in regards to operating expense and the cost of delivering and all of those type of things. But we deliver art for a city because it's important. It's important for actually the city going forward and developing, and it's also important for economic growth. So there's a whole lot of reasons why we do it, but today is actually about setting the scene to make sure that our federal and state governments join with the Gold Coast in delivering for our city.
Okay. Speaking against the motion, Councillor McDonald, go ahead.
Can I raise an issue on page 10?
That's a different item. It's the next one.
Yeah.
Leave it?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Peter Young.
Mr Mayor, can I speak briefly to the motion?
Okay. And just before, let me ask again, anyone speak against the motion? I'll go to Councillor Peter Young, then I'll yield my closing remark to Councillor Patterson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll just be brief. As you know, I was a member of the council in about 2008 when that council began the process of really seriously investigating upgrading the entire precinct here, and I think the work that's been done to date honours that period of time where the commitment was made and we engaged with the arts community, and there was a very strong, there was a very strong body of interest from the arts community in the city for us to progress much needed developments and improvements in the area, and I congratulate you and the council for contributing to the argument and progressing the project to this point in time. I think it is critical that we do get this on the table and we seek funds from our state and federal colleagues, because by all means they are certainly getting a lot of cash out of this city, and this would be honouring our entire community, and you have my support entirely. Thank you.
Okay. Councillors, I will pass on my closing of this debate and would ask Councillor Passon to speak on my behalf.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This started well before I was part of this chamber or entered in this chamber. And it was, even though through your vision and what you took to the city, it even started before you. So there have been mayors who've seen the vital importance of a key arts strategy and a key arts infrastructure for our city. So I, for one, am very grateful that I get to sit here today and to be able to vote on something that will really make a fundamental difference to what our city is, to how people view our city. And for cities that have gone through this process, it reminds me of what Singapore did. Very similar conversations that Singapore had in 20 years ago. Oh, you're a great city, but what's your culture? And they went through a very structured approach like we are doing now. So I thank you for your vision on this, Mr Mayor. Absolutely, as Councillor Owen-Jones said, per capita we are behind at the moment, and infrastructure comes in different ways. The state and federal government need to recognise that arts infrastructure is essential for this to be a place that people want to live in and that people want to come to. Thank you.
Okay. Councillors, debate's closed. I put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands. Oh, it's unanimous, is it? You want to Air Division call it? Joe?
Councillor Tate, Councillor Hamel, Councillor Jones, Councillor Gates, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Peter Young, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Bale-Lumsden, Councillor Lacastra, Councillor Taser, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Forster, Councillor Follion-Young, Councillor McDonald and Councillor O'Neill.
Unanimous. Thank you, councillors. That's wonderful. And so, Mr CEO, it's up and I to go and squeeze a few dollars. And let's go to item 2 now, 4.2, councillors. 2022 federal election advocacy. I think in this one we'll probably have to move to close because they're going to be some commercial in confidence, and so councillors, I move that we go into close based on commercial confidentiality. Solicitor, is that good enough? Do I need to add more than that?
Mr Mayor, we have suggested going into close for budgetary reasons because it goes through the various figures.
That's even better. Can you make it budgetary? Who's the seconder? Councillor Forster? Rightio. All in favour, show of hands. Against, motion carry, unanimous. Live streaming. Welcome back, viewers. Rightio. All 5.1 million of you. Right. Okay. Councillor Forster, you moved the motion. Can you read it? Stan?
All right, happy days. So, Mr Mayor, we have before us a motion that reads as follows. Number one, that the report and attachments be deemed non-confidential except for those parts deemed by the Chief Executive Officer to remain confidential in accordance with sections 171(3) and 204 of the Local Government Act 2009. Two, that the Council endorse the following city building projects as the highest priority for the Federal Government funding support in 2022. Gold Coast Light Rail Stage 4, next stage of the Gold Coast Cultural Precinct, and C, Greenheart. 3, that Council endorse the proposed funding requests and advocacy approach for each project. 4, the Hotter mid-year review presentation be tabled and included in the Council minutes as an attachment to the report. 5, that a media and communication plan be developed to support advocacy efforts, with Part A, that these plans be updated to include new information as endorsed by Council.
Seconder, Councillor Caldwell. Okay, we now have a motion afoot. Councillor Forster, could you open the debate?
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, we have a federal election coming up. We don't know when that election will be, but we do know it will be at the latest, I believe, in May. Now, Mr Mayor, the purpose of an election is it's an opportunity for an opposition or a government to seek a licence to govern with the consent of people. And that consent is granted when people support the platform, the promises put to them. Mr Mayor, we are Australia's 6th largest city. Quite often we talk about whether the city wears a blue tie or a red tie. But Mr Mayor, this city adorns a gold tie. And what we want, Mr Mayor, at this election is the rivers of gold to begin flowing into this city.
Oh, here.
Because, Mr Mayor, the reality is, as Australia's 6th largest city, we carry an enormous burden. Our small businesses, our large enterprises, we generate tax revenue which sustains the state, which sustains the Commonwealth, and it's about time that we extract a dividend for the contribution made by Gold Coasters, who are the risk takers, the innovators, and the ones willing to have a go. As a council, we have had the opportunity over many years to identify those projects which we believe will create dividends for this community. And those specifically, in no priority order, but listed A through C, are the 4th stage of the light rail, is the Gold Coast Cultural Precinct and the Greenheart. The great thing about these projects, Mr Mayor, is it's an opportunity for the federal government to make an investment in the city, not incur expenditure. And what I mean to say, Mr Mayor, is that when the federal government invests and supports the next stage of the light rail, they will uplift economic activity. They will help address a housing issue. When the federal government invests in the Gold Coast Cultural Precinct, they will be able to support Australian cultural identity. They will also be able to support a cultural economy, which will deliver tax receipts to them. And Mr Mayor, when they support the Greenheart, they will ensure that we are a city capable of hosting events, generating economic activity, but is still a livable city, which has been the ethos, so we're led to believe, of this government for a great many years. Mr Mayor, in summary, we're the 6th largest city. We're prepared to have a go, but we want our fair go. This is an opportunity for the government and the opposition to benefit from our very studious work over many years to support those projects that we know that will enhance and protect the Gold Coast and provide them a dividend in a stronger, more engaged community, and one that is economically sound, generating dividends which we expect will be reinvested back into the Gold Coast. I firmly believe that this is possibly a turning point for this council. We've known for a long time what our priorities are, And to my recollection, this is the first time we've endorsed those priorities in a council resolution and handed them to you, Mr Mayor, to run up the flagpole. That should send a very clear signal to any participant in the electoral process that we take this very seriously and we're tired of waiting. This is now on the public record and everybody will be performance managed at the ballot box.
Cool. Like that. Very good. Any one want to speak against? Councillor Tozer.
Mr Mayor, whilst I agree with everything that Councillor Vorster has said today, and I love the idea that we're actually putting our cards on the table and saying what we think is most important, I can't in good faith, having made previous comments about other projects that are city building, the prioritisation of those three projects, I just can't support it in that form. I love all three of those projects, and in this chambers I've spoken in favour of every single one of them at different times, but there are other projects that I think should be a higher priority for our city if we're rating them 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or 1 to 3. And I wouldn't be doing justice to both my previous comments and my advocacy for my own community if I support the recommendation as it is. I want to have respect for the conversation that happened in closed session, so I won't go into detail in relation to that. But I do want to reserve. I think there are other projects, not A, B or C, that should be a higher priority than A, B or C, and I can't support the motion before us.
Speaking for the motion, Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to speak particularly to 2B, the next stage of the Gold Coast Cultural Precinct. I think it's really important for Gold Coasters to understand that per capita, we are just not getting our fair share. And if journos are watching, they might like to go and do a bit of research and look at what is the arts funding federally per capita for Sydney and Melbourne, and how does that compare to Gold Coast? And it is stark. It is shocking. I totally agree with Councillor Vorster in his pitch on why we need this, and the thing about, I've just lost my train of thought, but the... Train of thought. My tram of thought. I'm sorry. So per capita we need this, and I feel like we're an unusual city here with regards to how we vote and how we vote federally, and I feel that there is a acceptance of bits and bobs, particularly when it comes to arts and cultural precinct. And I would say that we're not going to be accepting bits and bobs anymore. It is time for major infrastructure commitment from the federal government, particularly into our arts. Thank you.
Okay. Speaking against the motion, Councillor McDonald.
Mr Mayor, I too will not be supporting this because I feel that there are very important projects, and as you know, my concern with stage 4 of the light rail, and I feel that in this resolution it should have had more description of what the funding requests are for, and you know, there are other projects that I feel are more worthy. For instance, there should have been, I believe, consideration for the heavy rail from Varsity to Coolangatta that would have been put in here. So I will not be supporting this resolution.
Okay. Speaking for the motion, Councillor Caldwell.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I not only seconded this motion, but I'll support it as well on the basis that I think this is a targeted and balanced portfolio of projects that I think you can quite legitimately go out and say will be of the highest value and return to the city. For anyone who's contemplating voting against it because there are other projects off this page, I think that's probably not necessarily the right approach, because if the state government came to us tomorrow and said, look, we want to throw some money into something that you've got for koalas, or we want to throw something into a library or a community centre, we are open for business to talk to them about all matters of projects that they might be interested in delivering. But we have a targeted group of projects here, one of which is a significant transport project, one of which is a cultural project, and one of which is an environmental and recreational style of project. And I think that probably spells the way that we approach things as a city, that we are looking to improve and grow our city across all of those three sectors. And Mr Mayor, let's look forward to the report card coming back from the CEO after the election to see how everyone stacked up in terms of their backing these projects and backing our city. So on that basis, I am very supportive of the list that's been put together.
Okay. Speaking against the project, I'll go to Councillor Vorster to close.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. And I just through you want to thank Councillor Caldwell for making some excellent points, which basically establish the fact that these are three projects that we've identified that would benefit from federal funding, and now is the moment to ask. It doesn't come at the cost of any other capital projects and community projects that we're capable of funding in partnership with the state or the federal government, or with the support of ratepayers as business as usual. I think the point to make, Mr Mayor, is that in this moment it's not business as usual, and it demands a very well-constructed advocacy plan that performance manages those who tax us but haven't established why they're taxing us with a community dividend. Mr Mayor, as Councillor Caldwell said, this is transport, this is community, and this is open space and environment. There's something in this portfolio for absolutely everyone. I think it demands the support of this council, and I would hope, Mr Mayor, that you're in a position to show the community what these plans look like, to socialise them, so that the community also has the ability to talk to their candidates at the upcoming federal election about what they want. I think when the Gold Coast sees what Light Rail Stage 4 can be, when they see what the next stage of the cultural precinct can be, and when they see the flyover through the future Green Heart, I think they're going to be knocking at the doors of the federal MPs and candidates. So perhaps in your plans, Mr Mayor, you might grant the community the opportunity to stand side by side with us as community representatives to ensure that these projects go over the line. Appreciate it.
Councillors, the debate's closed. I call division. All right, so Mr McCabe, you stand ready. Councillor, I put the motion to you. All in favour, show of hands.
Councillor Tate, Councillor Hamill, Councillor Owen Jones, Councillor Gates, Councillor Caldwell, Councillor Peter Young, Councillor Patterson, Councillor Barn Lumsden, Councillor Castro, Councillor Taylor, Councillor Vorster, Councillor Pauline Young, Councillor O'Neill. Against? Councillor Tozer and Councillor McDonald.
Motion carry with a super majority. Councillors, there's no other items, so the